I think the second thing I see with the pros is kind of like they are just amazing at the basics, and I think that's one of the biggest
Well said.
misconceptions that coaches have is we all want to skip the basics because we think the basics are boring. But one, the best players never get bored with doing the basics. And second, the biggest misconception in basketball is that the basics are easy. Nobody's good at the basics. How good are you in your footwork? How good are you in your left hand? How good are you in your ball handling under pressure? How good are you as a passer? All of these very simple things or that we think are simple are actually really hard. You can never spend enough time on the basics.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, near or far. Welcome back to another episode of the Coach D podcast. And today, listeners, we've got someone truly special when it comes to the global teaching of the game. He is a pioneer in play development and the founder of Elite Athletes, Coach Joerik. With over 15 years of coaching experience across 40 countries, 5 continents, Joerik has worked with athletes at every level, from young grassroots hoopers to EuroLeague stars, WNBA talent, and even the NBA, collabing with Giannis and the NBA Workout Without Borders program. He has honestly, listeners, become one of the most respected voices in the world when it comes to small-sided games, decision making, and a CLA approach. So, in this episode, we're going to be highlighting the gems from players, coaches on how to rebuild real game skills, as well as separating pros from everyone else. So, listeners, without further ado, give a warm welcome to Coach Yurik. Appreciate you, Coach.
Yeah, whoa, what an intro, man. What an intro. Thank you.
Honestly, man, thank you so much for your time. And just before we even start with how you got into the sport and the coach and the man that you are today, how was your physical and how was your mental?
Right now, I would say I'm in a really good spot. I feel
Nice.
a lot of peace, a lot of gratitude, a lot of love. So yeah, man, life is treating me good right now.
Amazing, man. That's really good to hear, man. Honestly, and just having that resume, like you've coached, in 40 plus countries, over how many thousands of players. But before all of that, coach, what first pulled you into basketball and eventually into coaching?
So actually, I never wanted to play basketball. I always wanted to play soccer. Like my whole
Got it.
family is soccer. Like my dad and my granddad were playing on a really high level soccer in Belgium, and I always wanted to be like my dad. But from my bedroom, I could look on the playground of the school I was at. And
Uh,
after school, there was like a basketball team. So I always watched from my window, like their practices. And then my mom said, like, one day, do you want to go and take a closer look? And I was scared, but she was like, all right, come. And she pushed me. And then the coach said, like, hey, do you want to join? And I didn't know anything about basketball.
yeah,
But from the first moment I touched that ball, I was locked in. That was my
yeah,
thing.
yeah. To be honest, I mean, I had the same feeling, and even for me, like, some of the listeners know, like, basketball in London is still much it's a fast-paced growing sport in the
Hmm.
UK and especially London, which we love to see. But obviously, football or soccer is like the number one sport, and then it kind
Hmm.
of trickles down to the other sports. So in terms of the basketball culture, it's still very much growing. But for yourself, coach, what was the basketball culture like back then when you was kind of just getting into basketball?
I think when I was just getting into basketball, the same thing. It was like growing really fast. Um, but of course, as a kid, you see everything very differently than you see it now
Of
as
course,
an
yeah,
adult. You know, like if I would go and watch a first division game as a kid, I would be like, oh my god, this is unbelievable. And if you now look at it and you're like, ah, I can see a lot of things how we can improve the game in Belgium.
yeah.
But it's still the biggest indoor sport, and basketball is still growing till this day in Belgium also. So
Hmm.
it's on the right track. I think it just needs the right people to push and change the culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Same as UK, man. I think UK is
yeah,
the one of the biggest sleeping giants. in the basketball world, to be honest. So,
It's so true. Yeah. So true. And even just for me, like just to have a team, I've been fortunate enough to have some players both on the men's and women's side from the London Lions. And even
hmm
before that, before we was even in the Euro Cup,
hmm
I would have players ask coach, like, how come London isn't in the Euro League or Basketball Champions League or Euro Cup? And
hmm
there needed to be certain steps taken first, like a foundation being laid, so that we
hmm
can get to the point where we are today, where we have, a team that competes in the
hmm
Euro Cup, which is amazing to see. But for yourself, coach, like when or was there a moment early on when you realized coaching is what I'm meant to do?
no, I think for me, the moment I realized I wanted to be a coach was when at that moment I was 19. I was playing in probably, I think, maybe the best team Belgium ever had. Like from my team, 9 guys made it to the pro level.
Wow.
So we had an unbelievable team. And I felt like my body was not like we would practice 5 days a week, 2 hours, and then we would have 2 to 3 games, and I would have injury after injury. Like my body
Oh
was
wow.
not ready for that level. So the moment I realized like, oh shit, I'm not gonna make it.
Mm,
But then you start looking practices from a different way. And then I was like, I was always in the off season training with my best friend, but we would buy all these programs, like the better basketball
yeah,
DVDs and
yes. I was a part of
the
that. Yeah.
yes, the vertical jump programs, the dribbling programs, and then we would watch these DVDs and we would do these workouts, and then we would train with in my friend's garage with like kettlebells and all that stuff. And then YouTube came out, and I started watching every day. Like, okay, how do people train in USA? What are the best players in the world doing? And then I saw like, oh wow, Belgium is not doing anything like that.
Right.
So it started as training in the off season, and then more guys started to come. Can we join the workouts with you guys? And then I started training players for free. And I was lucky or aligned at that point that some of the players I started working with from my first clients were immediately guys who made it to Belgium national team. So I was able to grow
Amazing.
with them. And now we were probably one of the first ones in the world to make videos about basketball training. So that was right when YouTube started, and Instagram didn't even exist yet at that point. So I was on Facebook, and then we were just trying to make the basketball training cool. Like that was the moment where everybody was talking about chilling and relaxing, and we wanted to make hard work cool again. And I think we succeeded in that. And then after the first summer of working guys out for free, I had already 20 professional players. And
Wow.
then I posted on Facebook, like, hey, I want to do a basketball camp. If you're interested, join. And we had 75 players at the camp. And then I was like, okay, so people want to work out, and people want to be in a community with players from outside other teams. And then
Yeah.
it went off. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, man. That is amazing to be honest, man. And even just with that, it's funny, I was having this conversation. Shout out to Coach Donny, who coaches here in the UK for the GB under 16s and at the Caledonia Gladiators. I was like reflecting on it's really cool being a coach because you really get the opportunity to see the impact you have on players, but
hmm
also where you started from
hmm
with regards to maybe you were just kind of mimicking what you learned from your very first coach, and then you kind of develop your coaching philosophy, and then you kind of make little tweaks, adjustments, and then
hmm
you kind of hone your own coaching philosophy. I mean, and for yourself, coach, you've been coaching for like 15 plus years. So how has your coaching philosophy evolved from your early days to now?
Yeah, I think when I was starting, like I was 19, I didn't know anything about basketball training. No, I didn't had
Mm,
follow a course or anything. So what do you do is same thing. You watch the DVDs, or I watched on YouTube. Like that was the first years with Drew Hanlon and Jordan Lolly and DJ
yeah.
Sackman and Gannon Baker and
Yes.
all of those OG guys. So
Absolutely.
I would study them every single day, and then I was trying to mimic them and do that kind of stuff. So I would say my first years, I would be a very more traditional coach, like doing a lot of drills, like tennis ball drills, two balls,
Yeah.
like all of those things, a lot of stationary stuff, a lot of working on moves. So the very traditional way of drilling players. And then over the years, when you get more experienced and you keep doing your research, I learned about how they train in Canada and Australia with more like the games approach and using small sided games and the CLA and loading the art of teaching, like all of that
Mm,
stuff. And then I totally changed my approach and I started going all in on this stuff. And I think right now my path would be a mix of both. I think
yeah.
that works best for me, or that's the thing I believe the most in is, yeah, how you can be the most efficient with creating transfer from practice to the game.
Right. And this is something that I've kind of noticed through looking at your content and just even some of the basketball clinics that you've done. You talk a lot about the mental development and having
Hmm.
resilience, So when did that become a core pillar of your approach?
I think from the beginning, but maybe I always was into a growth mindset, and I just made this post about Kaizen that pretty much changed my life and the daily continuous improvement. So I would
Wow.
learn every day. Like that would be something I've been doing for 15 years now, try to learn at least one thing new every day. So then you learn, for me, like I started to see like, oh, basketball is so much more than just what we do on the court. I think the best
So true.
basketball trainers is a mix between technical and relational coaching. So technical
Well
coaching would
said.
mean you need to know your stuff, but you need to know what you're doing. You need to know your why. You need to be efficient with your time. But that's one part of the game. But I think the biggest part is the relational coaching. Like, can you truly get the most out of the player that is in front of you? Can you really get to know him? Can you understand him? Can you make him as confident as possible? And a lot of times you will make more impacts on that end than even with the skills part. If you can give a guy confidence and you can help him with the fears or the struggles that he has, and you can make him believe in himself, and you will see a guy blossom,
Yeah, yeah.
and a lot of times that's all they need. You can be the best player in the world if you're not confident or you have very negative self-talk, you're not gonna you're not gonna get the most out of your career. And the opposite is true. If you have a guy who's skills wise very limited, but he has the best mindset, like a lot of times these are guys who over deliver and still can get a crazy career, with very limited skills package. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And even on that, coach, like what is one concept or like one belief that you had early in your career that you've completely changed your mind about?
That's a good question. It's a really good question. I would say the more I see it, the less I am about winning games. I think winning games is an outcome.
Interesting.
I think everything is process oriented. Like you can win a game with 60 points and not be happy. You can lose a game with 20 points and think we had an amazing performance. So I started to look at the bigger picture. Maybe also I think I become way more relaxed. Like the game is very emotional. Like definitely if you're a head coach, the game is emotional. You want to do everything for the win, but I learned to relax and kind of like s- keep your emotions the same, not get too high, get too low. And doesn't matter what happens, start to understand that everything happens for a reason and everything is something that the player can learn from. Doesn't matter if we
True.
win or lose, we see it as a learning experience.
True. And that's something that I've really decided to accept within myself, and I'm starting to really teach that to the players. Like it's bigger than basketball, like
Hmm.
missed layup doesn't define you as a player or
Hmm.
a person, and even for me as a coach, and I'm sure you kind of go through it as well. Like if you win a game or your player isn't quite developing, you rather than going through those thoughts of I'm a bad coach or like I should have given her or him more and stuff, like it's just,
Hmm.
you know, how you did today doesn't define you. As long as you can be a student and use failure as feedback, then you
Yes.
can get, like you said, you can get the best out of that person. And
Yes.
kind of moving into the small sided games and the CLA approach. Shout out to Coach Alex. He opened my mind up on a
Mm-hmm.
whole new level because, kind of similar to you, I came from a very historical coaching background, cold drills. It
Mm-hmm.
must be this footwork, it must be this type of layup, and the drills must, or your sessions must look like this, very rigid, But
Mm-hmm.
for coaches who aren't familiar, how would you explain the power of small sided games and the CLA approach in player development?
I think to say it in a very simple way is we're teaching and learning the game while playing the game. I think that's a very easy way to explain small-sided games. So we do everything immediately with decision making. We do everything immediately with some type of defense. So instead of the traditional way where you would do drills, repetitions by yourself, and then we have the game, like we try to mix both together to explain it in a very simple way.
Right. And with traditional coaching, it really often focuses on kind of, like you said earlier, isolated drills. So why do you
Mm-hmm.
feel small-sided games in CLA prepare players better for real game situations?
To explain it in a very simple way, I always tell this story about the zoo tiger versus the jungle tiger. I don't know if you heard of it.
Yes, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So if you think about a zoo tiger, it's kind of like every day is the same in the zoo. You get your food. You know exactly what to expect. There is no danger. There is no adaptation, and you're kind of like always in your comfort zone. Then if you have a jungle tiger, like every day is different. You constantly need to be alert. Maybe you need to fight. Maybe you need to search for your food. You don't know what's happening. You need to be constantly be on and focused. Then if you think about if you compare this to basketball, like what would be the game in the weekend? Is the game in the weekend, is it more like the zoo or is it more like the jungle? So for me, I would say the game is the jungle, like it's not two games are the same. You never know what to expect. You need to be adaptable. You need to fight. You will need to be on the whole time. So, but most coaches, they train like the zoo. So what happens if you put zoo tigers in the jungle? Only the best survive. And that is what you see pretty much with every U team is they have two or three guys who are naturally more gifted and they run the team. And then you have some middle guys and then you have some guys who are not really good. And that's pretty much
yeah,
90% of the U teams. And then if you see a
yeah.
good U team, most of the times the guys are recruited. They're not developed. But show me a U team where guys, you have one group, you don't recruit, and all of the guys can have success on the court. Then you're doing something good in practice. So I think if we can train more like the jungle, like the wild, then it's gonna transfer way more to the game with all of your players and not just the players who are more naturally gifted.
Well said. No, I mean, absolutely. And this is one thing for myself. It took me a while to, because it's one thing to understand the concept, but then it's another thing when you
Mm-hmm.
try it out on players and you may need to regress it, progress it, keep at a certain level. And even for yourself, like it took me a minute to find that happy medium, of
Yes.
trying that CLA approach. And it definitely takes some time. And even for yourself, when you first started coach to now, like, can you share an
Mm-hmm.
example of a constraint you used that created an immediate improvement in a player's decision making?
Yeah, I will tell you an example how maybe more how I've failed. I think that will be
I love it. I
be
love it.
something where you learn the most through adversity, I think. So, and how I see also most coaches fail. So, the biggest problem with using CLA or small sided games is we need to make sure players train at the right level of challenge. So, we call this the sweet zone. That means not too hard, not too easy. So, to give you an example, when I started using shooting under pressure, like I would do a lot of games where we wouldn't start with an advantage. So we go from one on one, but we need to, for example, finish with any kind of shot. So what do you see right now is the players, if you do this with youth players, average youth players, like a lot of the players are not skilled enough to create a high percentage shot. So that means a lot of the shots would be contested, would be low percentage shot. They don't see the ball go in a lot of times. So, for example, that was me being
Mm.
a terrible architect in practice, making the practice way too hard. Like I was maybe doing these contested drills where if you have an NBA guy who's a fantastic shooter, that would be the right challenge for him. But I was doing this with youth guys and it was way too hard. So if they train in what we call the trash zone where it's too hard, your players are not getting better. The opposite is also true, and you see this also a lot of times on social media. For example, the drill where the ball starts on the back. Now the whole world has seen this drill,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
True.
if you just play one on one and you have really good guys, like 99% of the times, it's going to be a wide open layup, you know? So that means players are right now training in what we call the comfort zone. That means more than 80% of the time they have success rate. So that means same thing as the trash zone, players are not getting better because it's too easy. So you need to find the right challenge, like 60 to 80% success rate. And success rate doesn't mean the ball needs to go in. It means the player should be able to find the right solution to the problem that you created in your small sided game.
Yeah.
And that's really hard because the thing is, let's say you have 12 guys, you have two guys national team, you have two guys who are first day at basketball. Their optimal level of improvement, their sweet zone is going to be very different. So you as a coach, as the architect, you need to create your practices. So, okay, maybe these guys should do this drill, but maybe these guys can do one load higher already. Or maybe this guy is my best guy. Okay, you can only score this way, or you have to score with your weekend, or, like you need to find the right level of improvement for every player. And that's the hardest thing in small sided
Mm.
games. And that's what I see. If you open Instagram, you see now the whole world is using small sided games, but you see how many guys are training in either the comfort zone or the trash zone.
True.
And so that's something I think many coaches don't really understand yet, or still need to improve on.
Yeah, that's well said. And like you said, I really love how you highlighted success isn't the players seeing the ball go through their rim. It's success is them. There's a problem. They're experimenting with finding the solution. They might fail a bit, almost get
Hmm.
there, and then when they finally solve it,
Hmm.
then that's when there is success. So like just why did you mean that? Because I feel like a lot of people will overlook, no, like the ball has to go through the basket, but if they're not
Hmm.
actually reading the game and finding solutions, and we're not saying to leave them on their own, like we give them little cues or little hints, but then they will have
Hmm.
to figure the rest out. But why did you mean that? Because I think that is so key.
Yeah, I think what you always say is like decision over outcome. So that means like as a coach, you need to give feedback and you need to coach the decision, which is way more important than the outcome. So for example, let's say you have a 3-on-3 and a player does a fantastic backdoor cut, catches the ball and blows the layup. Many coaches would be like, "What? You just missed an open layup." But no, he made a fantastic read with the defender was denying. I should have gone backdoor. He made the perfect read. The opposite is true is let's say you have a guy who's attacking the basket out of control, takes a terrible shot over two guys, and the ball goes in, but his teammate is wide open in the corner, for example. Yeah, that's even though the outcome is there, that's a terrible decision because it's 1-on-2, so it means it's not for you, pass the ball to the open guy. And that's when you need to give feedback also using small sided games, always focusing more on the decision than the result. So if the guys can create an advantage and we can create with a high percentage shot, meaning an open shot or any kind of layup, for example, then they have played fantastic basketball because that's what you want as a coach. If the ball doesn't go in, yeah, then that means they need to get more skills on that. But they
Yeah,
made the right decision. So you have to be very happy as a coach with that. And that's something else I think many coaches still are too much focused on success means the ball goes in
yeah.
versus not teaching the decision making, if that makes sense.
Right, absolutely, and there's very few coaches who get the opportunity to work out with the highest level talent the league and this world has to offer, and even just for yourself, coach,
Mhm,
you work with Giannis Antetokounmpo, Judy Van Loo, and other EuroLeague players. So, in your opinion, from working out with that high level talent and IQ, what
mhm.
separates those pros from everyone else?
Maybe real quick, with Giannis, I only done camps for him. I haven't
Mhm.
been on the court for him before I get a lot of messages about this one.
Right.
But no, to be honest, I think one, if I look at the highest level of pros, the practices would be the same as with kids. Like I would use the same drills a lot of times as with good youth players, but we would just change the constraints or we would change the loads to make it harder. That's one.
Yeah.
I think the second thing I see with the pros is kind of like they are just amazing at the basics, and I think that's one of the biggest
Well said.
misconceptions that coaches have is we all want to skip the basics because we think the basics are boring. But one, the best players never get bored with doing the basics. And second, the biggest misconception in basketball is that the basics are easy. Nobody's good at the basics. How good are you in your footwork? How good are you in your left hand? How good are you in your ball handling under pressure? How good are you as a passer? Like all of these very simple things, or that we think are simple, are actually really hard. You can never spend enough time on the basics. And I think that's the biggest thing I see with pros. And secondly, I think a lot of times, or at least the pros who have a long career, like the mindset is different. Like
Yeah.
the character is different. And I think that's probably the biggest indicator also that I've seen to make it as a pro. If you have the right body type, of course, to play basketball at a high level, I think it's just character. Like
Right.
yeah, you will
Right.
come
And
very far with character.
yeah, that's true, and I hear that a lot. And even just what you said is so true. Just mastering. I mean, if I got $1 for every time I heard the word, the greatest athletes master the basics and they do it
Hmm.
consistently. And what you
Hmm.
said there was so key, and it's something that is overlooked. And when
Yeah.
you're working with these pros, coach, or even just like high level talented athletes,
Hmm.
especially during the off season, what does a typical workout look like?
I think for me also, the most important thing is I need to be super efficient with my time and with their time. We don't in the off season you don't have a lot of time. So what I would do is I would make a plan up front, maybe like a SWOT analyze where I go over with with the player. And a lot of times we want to get more impact. How do you say it? Like more information. For example, can we get some information from their coaching staff, from their agent? Everybody can share their opinion, and then we're gonna choose three golden topics. And the three golden topics
Mm,
would be 80% of the time we're going to focus on that stuff. So every workout will be focused on those three topics. And then we would have 1 to 2 silver topics. And silver topics would be like we would switch them, and 20% of the time we spend time on that, but maximum 5 things in total. And the golden topics, most of the times, would be the things where they get paid for to do. So how can we make their superpowers even better? Because a lot of times that's where they get paid for. So for example, I would say a silver topic most of the times would be either something that we can expand or a weakness. But a lot of times a weakness will not be one of the three topics. The only time when a weakness becomes one of the topics is if it's really hurting them in their in their inner time on the court, or that's why they don't get as much minutes. So for example, that could be if you can only go right hand and everybody's figuring that out and they push you left all game and you can't do anything, like okay, then maybe weak hand would be a golden topic. So that would be one. So we have a very clear plan, and with the player, like this is what we're going to work on in the off season, so he's already very locked in. And then with the practices, I make like a menu. So a menu would be like for every of the 3 to 5 topics that we have, I would write down all the drills that I think would be most beneficial. And then I just every day I choose from the menu based on the intensity that we can go. And my practices a lot of times will be very short, like definitely with high level pros, we don't go longer than 45 minutes. but the intensity would be insane. Like I want to make
Yeah,
my
yeah,
practices harder than the game.
right.
Uh, so, and I think you can do a lot also in 45 minutes. It's better to have a 45 minute, but we go 100% than have a spend a lot of time in the gym and just doing things that just don't translate to the game.
Yeah, yeah. And this is the beauty about what you do. It's like what you learn training those high level athletes, you're able to pass on to the next aspiring athletes, you know? So for
Hmm.
yourself, coach, like what have you learned from training elite players that you now apply to the youth development?
I think what I see from players is like one, they have elite habits. Like elite players have elite habits. Like they all have a routine before practice or after practice. They watch a lot of basketball, like all of
Yes.
them still watch a lot of basketball. They are obsessed with getting better. On the other hand, they also all have like hobbies outside of basketball. So I think that's also something that you see a lot of times players struggle with is if you only define yourself as a basketball player, then every weekend your self-worth is going to be determined by if you played good or bad.
Well said.
And then you
Yeah.
see with definitely with young guys like 17, 18-year-olds, they struggle a lot with that. Versus if you look, for example, as Julie Van Loo, after the game, maybe she go and watch soccer or she plays FIFA on the PlayStation or you know like they are able to zoom out and do other things to get their mind off basketball. They don't define themselves only as I am a basketball player, and I think that's very important for your mental health also to be doing this in the long run because basketball is a game of mistakes. Like
So true.
you're gonna go like this, you know. So there's no one who's performing consistently day in day out on the highest level. So.
Yeah. How do you get players to separate them as a player versus
Hmm.
them as a person? Like, how do you convey that message? Because even for me as a coach, I didn't really learn that lesson until COVID, where everyone was
Hmm.
taken away from what they love doing. And it took me a minute to be like, okay,
Hmm.
I've watched every fever game I could watch on YouTube. I've seen every shooting clinic, defensive clinic. Okay, let me take off the
Yes.
Coach D hat. And what does
Hmm.
Demetrius like to do? It took me a minute, you know, but for yourself,
Hmm.
like, how do you teach that message? Because I think it's so important.
Yeah, I think it's just opening their eyes, like, hey, who are you as a person? You know, like if you ask, hey, who are you? And you would say, I'm a basketball player. No, you're not a basketball player. You know, like you play basketball, but you're not a basketball player. You're more
Yeah,
than this. So I think one, that, and then try to see what else do you like in life. And if you don't know, a lot of times players don't know because they're so locked in on basketball. You try to push them to go and explore new things. And on the other hand, I think to what you say about separating yourself, I think it's the easiest time ever to separate yourself right now as a basketball player. I think the world is more distracted than ever. If you look
yeah,
at an average kid would be 4.5 hours a day on their phone. Like even if you would use 1 hour screen time less a day and invest that in getting better, like it's the easiest time ever to separate yourself. We're all doing so many things that are not efficient with our time that if you can create elite habits, you're gonna separate yourself very easy
right,
in this generation.
right. And you just said it there, elite habits, you know. So if you could
Hmm.
bottle up three habits every young athlete should steal from a pro, what would they be?
I think what one would be biggest problem with this generation is they don't watch basketball anymore. So they watch highlights, but they don't watch full games. They don't study the game. So I think then that's number one because it's the easiest way to get better without being on the court is watching the game or studying the game. Same thing. Easiest time ever. You have YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. You just instead of watching stupid shit, watch things that inspire you and make you better.
Yeah,
I would say that's one. I would say two, Kaizen, like have the mindset of become 1% better every day. If you can even if it's just 1 minute or take one shot extra after practice, but every day do something more than the guy next to you. Like I once gave a presentation in Kazakhstan this year about showing how mini habits create big results. So I made like a graphic with two players, player A, player B. And player A always leaves immediately after practice. And player B would stay longer in practice and make three spots, five three-pointers. So 15 shots in total. And then we would see they would be both 14 years old. And then we would see how their career would go. And then by the age of, I think, 20, he would have made, what was it? I know, um, more than 50,000 three-pointers more than the other player, like who's going to be the best shooter. And this is a habit that only takes 2 minutes after every practice, you know? So mini habits lead to huge results, like you said during COVID.
Yeah.
If you're studying all that stuff, you're doing more than 99%. So you're in the 1% club. And if you
Right.
can do that every day, like it's not rocket science. If you can take it a step further every day, in 1 year, even you're gonna be in the 1%. What are you gonna be in 10 years, in 15 years? You know, like the sky is the limit. And I think
Yeah.
that's the same thing. Like I asked Coach Popovich, what was the biggest advice you have for me? And he said, every day wake up thinking that you don't know anything because you will stay curious. He said, never lose a white belt mentality, like fighting sports. If you can separate your ego and just think like, okay, I need to learn every day and I don't know anything, you're going to find answers and you're going to separate yourself from anybody else.
Yeah. I love that, man. Have the white belt mentality. That is so true because you're always a student learning,
Yes.
which is the lesson of life. And we say the word elite, great. We look at players like Steph, Sue Bird, Diana Taurasi,
Mm-hmm.
Luka Doncic, and we all
Mm-hmm.
admire and can recognize that greatness, but very few
Mm-hmm.
really want to replicate that. Like there not many athletes who really want to go for a training session just practicing the fundamentals or the basics or going through
Mm-hmm.
film or really
Yes.
challenging themselves. So what's the biggest misconception young players have about
Yes.
becoming elite, would you say?
Yes. I think the biggest misconception players have is that they think becoming elite is all about sacrifices and like working hard and grinding. And I think same thing if I look at my best players, or if I think if Steph Curry is the best example you just used, is they keep having fun. They still love the game like they loved as a kid. If something is hard, if you need to hustle, you need to grind, you need to force, then it's very hard to stay disciplined because you put yourself always, I need to do this, I need to do this training. But if you are just having fun, then basketball becomes what you love to do. I don't want to do anything else rather than play basketball. If you have this mindset, then you see practice as super fun, and practices are super fun, which is, I think, goes hand in hand with the small sided games. Everybody loves playing games, or everybody loves being challenged with the CLA. Then, if you keep having fun, then learning becomes natural, and discipline doesn't become force; it becomes flow. If that makes
Ooh,
sense.
say that again, coach.
Yeah.
That was a gem. Wow.
No, discipline doesn't become force; it becomes flow. And I think Steph Curry is the biggest example for like,
Yeah.
yeah. If you, there was an interview lately where he had a crazy game. I don't know anymore the game he had, but then the interviewer asked him like, yeah, and how does that feel? And he was like, yeah, man, it's just really fun to be out there and just trying some stuff and just seeing the ball come in. Like, I really had a lot of fun tonight. He only talked about fun. And I think that's the biggest misconception. We think hard work should be all sacrifice. And I don't agree with that. I think you get the most out of life if you act on your highest form of joy. You know, like if you're constantly doing what brings you the most joy and you do that the best to your abilities, then life or the universe has no other chance than to return those those things to you, you know?
Yeah.
So if that makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And from your experience, coach, what
Hmm.
separates a talented young player from
Hmm.
one who actually becomes a pro?
Yeah, very simple character. Like talent will open the door at 18 and give you an opportunity, but only character can give you a career till you're like 35.
True. That is true, and it really is that simple. And when it comes to the skill development side, especially for the
Hmm.
youth, one thing I love, and even for myself, we're both big on decision making. So, how do you build
Hmm.
that in kids who are still learning fundamental skills?
One, I think there's still a time and place also for drills or for moves or for uh, technique work or for so I just want to get that out because I think too many coaches make it now black and white and saying it
Yeah.
has to be small sided games, it has to be CLA, and I don't, or at least my experience is that there's still a time and place for that. You want to give players kind of like a library of solutions, I think, for problems, and then you put them in the problem situations. For me, that works best.
Right.
But then we come back to small sided games, CLAs. We need to have players training to their sweet zone. So how can you do that if you want to add small sided games but kids are pretty new to the game? Is what we do a lot of advantage games or advantage
Yeah.
starts. So that means I love, for example, drills where I put the basketball in the defender's hand. So now they cannot reach for the ball. So your dribble is safe. Or you put the ball even behind them. So now there is a defender, but he can't block you. He can't steal, but he still can use his footwork. One, he will
Yeah.
learn to have better footwork as a defender. Second, you as an offensive player now has a much higher success rate, but in a game like scenario. So things like that is you need to like this loading or deloading is the art of teaching. So you need to understand like for this level or this age group or this experience of kids, what kind of loads or deload should I have to have them have the right success rate in this game?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that can be many things, you know. Advantage starts can be, I don't know, defender starts on your back, defender starts on your hip, so you start with a straight line advantage. Advantage can be numbers advantage, three versus two, two versus one, and that kind of stuff. Use tools, and we talked about the basketball, many things like this you can use. Defender has one hand in their pocket. I don't know, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can you can play with so many different things,
Yeah.
but they need to see the ball go in because
Right.
if they don't have success rates, then practice is not fun. Like the most fun part in practice is for little kids to see the
Yeah.
ball go in. You know, when they
Right.
score, they have a smile on their face. So you need to make
Right.
sure they can get to that level.
Right. Right. And even on that, like, this is one thing I've learned over the years. Like, kind of when I was a player and a coach
Hmm.
was speaking, you didn't bounce the ball whatsoever. You would be zoned in, hold that focus. Okay, the coach says go. We got five
Hmm.
seconds to get to the baseline to set it up, or 12 seconds to get to four corners and set it up. Whereas now I found myself like, because I'm outside of teaching basketball, I'm a full-time
Hmm.
PE teacher in a primary school, and their years like range from kids who are 5 all the way up to 11. So you have to be very creative. I kind of find myself giving quick 10, 15-second sound bites. Okay, now go and do it. So when
Yes.
it comes to, I'm super intrigued, coach. Like, what is your process for keeping players engaged, especially
Hmm.
in long or intense sessions?
Yes. Same thing goes back to the phone generation. Like the youth is changing, so we need to change how we coach. So I always one, I think you need to create a culture where when you talk, players got to give you eyes and ears because being present is just in this generation where pretty much everybody's struggling with. And so you need to demand that they're being present, they're being in the moment. That's one. I think how can we make it fun? How can we keep them in the moment? Is we have to make our talks very short. Like we have a rule, like the rule of 30. Like when we try to explain a small sided game, we have to explain it under 30 seconds. If it takes longer than 30 seconds, a lot of times it's too hard or it's too complicated or information gets lost. And same thing with small sided games, like easy is best, like simple is best. So if you create simple small sided games, you should be able to, all right, 30 seconds max, you talk, boom, all right, go, play. And I like to use other things. Like I use all my practice would be with music. I think
Nice.
music is the best way to create energy everything in this world is energy. So we have to create the right energy in practice. So how can we do it? For me, music is the easiest way to do that. It immediately creates a good vibe. You will see most coaches think with having music on, oh no, my players will zoom out. And you'll see
Mm,
the opposite. They will be way more present. Because now also they don't talk, they're not thinking, they're listening to the music, they feel the vibe, so they want to compete, they will compete much harder. Also, it makes you much better as a coach because now instead of you going to talk the whole time to fill the silence, now with the music playing super loud, you're going to be really precise on when you talk and you're going to be more better in observing. So I think that's for me, I think a huge thing would be putting music. And then the third thing is like everybody wants to compete. If you play
yeah,
basketball, you want to compete, you want to be challenged. So if you can have a practice that's all about competing, then players will one find it more fun, and two, they will be more in the moment. Because if you are zoomed out, then you will never win, and then you will get a lot of times destroyed in practice. So it forces players automatically to bring the best version of themselves.
right. And you've traveled across the globe teaching the sport that you love. So just before we even speak about that experience, like
Hmm.
when you get that moment, coach, just to reflect, like, I'm in a whole other country right now. I'm in Canada. I just came from Australia. Even when you look at your passport, coach, and you're like, wow, you're telling
Hmm.
me this sport that I love so much has taken me across the globe. I've had so many amazing experiences. I've met great people, really, really
Hmm.
close friends. Like when you get that time to reflect, coach, like what moments, feelings, highlights, lowlights come to mind?
Yeah, the feeling that comes to mind every day would be gratitude. Like I am really, yeah, happy for where I'm at in my life. And like you said, the biggest thing from all those trips would be always the people. It's the people that make the trip special. Like you can be in the gym anywhere in the world, but it's the people that are in the gym or the people where you're doing it with. It's the conversations. It's the jokes, it's the
Yeah,
dinners, it's those things that will stick to you in the end, It's not
yeah,
the drills or and I think it's the same as a player, like if you would meet a player in 10 years who you coach right now, and now it's an adult and he has a family, and you would say, hey man, what was your highlight? He's not going to say, oh, remember that small sided game or remember this drill or
true.
remember that game. No, he's going to remember how you make him feel. He's going to remember the conversations you had when maybe you helped him become more confident or, like
Yeah,
things like this. So I think it's the same with the trips. It's the conversations and the people make it special. Yeah.
right. And like we said, I mean, you've coached across 5 continents, so how does basketball culture differ around the world?
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing I see is everywhere kids are kids. So if you go to Kazakhstan or you go to Morocco or you go to Australia or Canada or USA, kids are the same. It's the biggest thing that you see is different is the culture, the practice environment, and there are not many places I think who have an unbelievable practice environment and an
Yeah,
unbelievable culture. But it's the places where they have something special like that where you see the results. But I think this is a very big thing to see is like, and I had a video on Instagram about this talking to the kids from Kazakhstan, like these kids are not different than anywhere else. So for example, now these guys from Kazakhstan, they signed up for the EUBL tournaments in Europe, and they just come from their first trip and they won 3 out of 4 games. And they were like,
amazing.
this is insane. We won against European teams. And they were like, oh, the whole country is like, what the hell? They won against European teams. And it's like,
Yeah,
yes, if you create the right practice environment, you're going to get results. And I think that is, yeah, a lot of times smaller countries think like, oh, wait, kids, yeah, but they're from this small country. No, you can do amazing things in your area if you just create the right environment. You're always a
true.
product of your environment.
Right.
So it's much more about that than, yeah, what type of kids you have. Of course, you need. if you want to really talk about high level pros, you need the things you can't teach is your body type, of course. But without that, you can still get pretty far with any type of kit, you know.
Right. Right. And just pausing the podcast there real quick, coach, just to kind of give you an update. I've got one more topic after
Hmm.
this, and then we'll wrap up with the Beyond the Game segment. Is that okay with
Yeah,
you?
man, that's perfect. That's
Okay.
perfect.
Perfect. Appreciate your time, coach, man, honestly.
Yeah, man, no worries.
And with that, coach, like you said, like how a small country can have such a huge impact, again, when you really create the right environment, for those players to really develop, like which country surprised you the most in terms of basketball IQ or talent?
Good question. I think for me, the country that stands out for sure is Australia. But I don't know if it's a surprise. I think we take Australia for granted, but I think if you look at, they only have, I, is it 40 million people, I think, in Australia, which is pretty small compared to many other countries that are doing very good in basketball. I think the second thing is they have a lot of physical challenges because the cities are so far away. Like a lot of
Yeah,
teams in there, they only play this locally because traveling costs too much money or you have to take a plane and stuff like that. So, but still, they on every level they are doing amazing. Women, men, boys, girls, internationally. So I think they have the best culture, the best coaches development program, and the best environment to teach basketball from what I've seen worldwide for sure. And then I would say second thing is like, yeah, I'm really impressed with Kazakhstan. Like I've been there now 4 times this year, and this is the perfect result this weekend where they win 3 out of 4 games. It's like, yeah, we can do pretty cool stuff in there, you know,
yeah,
like it's, and the guys from Champ Season and Sydney now they put everything in there to create the right environment, and it's showing off already after 1 year what it's going to be in 5 years, in 10 years, you know?
right.
Maybe we have a Kazakhstan guy in the NBA. I think it's possible, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and this is something that I learned that was very interesting. Again, shout out to Coach Donnie. He was saying, he very much adopts how they're teaching their players in Spain. Where I mean, I didn't know this, and I'm sure you might
Hmm.
know this already. He was telling me with the under 12s, especially in the leagues, the referees do not call fouls on the ball. They
Hmm.
don't take the ball after a team scores, and also they're very clinical when it comes to travel. So out of that, you get guards at that age who get used to
Hmm.
handling the ball under pressure. As soon as the team scores, we're inbound, and so it kind of promotes the game to be quicker. And two, if
Yes.
a ref is calling a travel every single time, the player is gonna figure it out eventually, which is super interesting how that country is already like putting certain things in place so that the aspiring athletes can really learn from and they create, like you said, elite habits. So what
Hmm.
have you learned overseas that you think coaches in Europe or the USA need to adopt?
Good question. What I think is the problem in Europe compared to Canada or Australia is that in here we specialize too early. So, for example, I don't know how it is in UK, but I think it's pretty similar. Like in Belgium, you're 6 years old, you choose one sport. I'm going to play
Uh,
basketball. I'm going to play soccer. And then if you look at Australia, for example, where you have winter and summer sports, everybody's doing at least two sports. If you look at Canada, everybody's doing at least 2 to 3 sports till the age of 14. And then when they are 14, you kind of like choose what kind of sport you do. But then if you look at the statistics, for example, in D1, there's been an article that came out a couple of years ago, and it showed that 83% of the players in Division One in college have played multi-sport till the age of 14. And I
wow.
think that's a crazy stat. And I think that's a big problem in Europe that I think we should change is we need to get more uh, players to do multiple sports. That will be huge, beneficial in the long run. I think that's one. I think the second thing I see that, for example, Canada and Australia do differently that I think we in Europe can also adapt is in Europe you play for one team pretty much the whole year. But in Canada, it's like you have state teams, you have rep teams, you have community teams, you have school teams, and then you have national level. So you have 4 or 5 different type of teams where you can play for in one season. So everything is much shorter, and you can only train maximum 2 times with the same team. So now you, for example, play three games in the weekend, but for 3 different teams. And I think that makes sure like you see a lot more coaches during the year. You also they're all different levels, so you can always compete on multiple levels, which I think is much better. And that makes much more sense than, for example, in Belgium, you have one coach, 10 months, and probably you have him for 2 or 3 years, and then you have another coach. It makes way more sense in having 4 or 5 coaches, but very limited time during the year. So they need to be more efficient with their time.
Yeah.
Will benefit the players much more, I think.
Right. I love that. And just the final topic, coach, before we wrap up with the Beyond the Game
Hmm.
segment, which I'm super intrigued to get your mind on in that segment. But starting with the coaches first, just with regards to takeaways, and then second the players, like when it comes to coaches, for coaches who want to implement the CLA approach or a
Hmm.
small sided game, or just in general, just to have a more effective practice, where should they start if they don't know like step one of a CLA or a small sided game?
Yeah, I think one, you can find a lot of information online about it. For example, in my recent book, I made CLA super simple. So I think for every coach to understand, but even online, you'll find a lot of stuff. Think about transforming basketball with Alex, for example, has a million things about this thing. You can also just find a lot of free stuff also about it. So I think first you need CLA is it's simple once you understand it, but many coaches don't understand it. So do your research first. I think before you start, it's not about that's a good small sided game. No, you want to become the architect, and it can be like we talked to in beginning with the shooting. This can be a very good small sided game if you have an NBA guy, but maybe if you have 10-year-old kids, this is not the right small sided game, or maybe the right small sided game, but not the right constraint for them. So I think one, do your research so you understand the framework, and then you can go from the drill sergeant to the architect in training, and then you will see how fun it is also to coach this way, I think.
And what's one thing every coach must prioritize to prepare athletes for the modern game?
I think skills has become, the fundamentals have become more important than ever. Like you need to be able to do everything. And same, if you look at the game right now, you're even like if I watch EuroLeague right now or NBA, there's never been more uh, one-on-one, I think. Like
Yeah,
you can have any set play you want. In the end of the set play, it will be one-on-one, you know? So if you're not skilled, if your player can't shoot, if your player can't beat, or cannot create an advantage himself, then you will have a hard time playing at these levels because it used to be like 1 or 2 guys should be able to create an advantage. But
yeah,
now it's more like everybody should be able to do it. And so I think if you really want to maximize your chances of your players, they need to become amazing. I say basic amazing, become
yeah. I
amazing
like that.
at
Basic
the
amazing.
basics, you know, and
Yeah,
then it will help them the most in the long run.
right. And for the players, with regards to takeaways, like what are three things every player must learn?
I think one, yeah, habits, create elite habits. If you want to be a pro, then have habits, perfect pro habits. So I would say one, when you're not on the court and you want to be on your phone, use it wisely. Like use it as a thing to challenge and motivate and inspire you. I would say two, after practice, try to do at least something extra. So maybe it is, I finish practice with 3-on-3 free throws. I don't know. Depends on how much
Yeah,
time you have, but try to do something more every day than anybody else. And I think that goes hand in hand with try to embrace the Kaizen mindset 1% better every day. If you
right,
embrace this mindset, then you will see results. Yeah, I would say those two would be that will help them already a lot.
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
And
just and
maybe, yeah, if
yeah,
I have to say third one,
yeah,
play as much one-on-one as possible. Like if you're on a court outside and you see a random dude, even if you can't play basketball, All right, one on one. Okay, but I'm too good. Okay, now I'm gonna challenge me. Oh, I can only shoot. I can only create shots. I'm gonna try to do work on new moves, or I'm gonna try to work on my beat him with my weak hand, or like things like that. You know, like
Yeah.
or even you can play around. Like, I'm gonna try and give him an ankle breaker, or you know, like things to challenge yourself. But playing one on one will be one of the best ways you can do outside of practice to
Yeah.
develop your skills in game like situations.
Right. And just wrapping up, coach, with the beyond the game segment and this first question, I'm super intrigued to get your mind on just with your level of experience, but also your approach to the game. Now, this could go the life route, basketball, or both. It's really whichever one
Hmm.
resonates the most. And the question that I've got for you, coach, is what would you say is a skill that is taught by many, but only mastered by a few?
Very good question. I think the secret to life is consistency. I think if you are consistent, you're in the 1% club of society. And I think you don't have to be crazy talented. Of course, you have to be aligned in what you want to do, but you don't have to be crazy talented. I think consistency is the key to fulfill your dreams. And yeah, it's the thing that helped me the most in my
Yeah,
life, I would say. And if you can be consistent, yeah, you can be part of the 1% club of people who really fulfill their dreams.
well said. I love that. Honestly, I love that. Second one, what is something failure taught you that success couldn't?
I think always you learn much more in failure, and I don't believe in failure. I think it's the wrong word. I think there's if something doesn't work out, it always happens for a reason, and it means like life is trying to teach you something. So I stopped really believing in failure and more constantly think if something doesn't go my way, I'm thinking like, okay, what is this trying to teach me? And it will totally change your mindset. And then if the goal is growth, then you'll never fail. So I
Mm,
think if you change your mindset, like yeah, whatever is going to happen is going to be good because I want to grow, you know? So that would be, yeah, a key thing for sure.
right. And final three, the best piece of advice you ever received.
I think the one from Popovich, like
Yeah,
just, he said that also to build on what I said already before. He said the day you stop learning is the day you're done and someone's going to take your spot, you know?
yeah,
And I think it's the same, like if you have a growth mindset, then learning becomes super fun and super natural. And I don't feel like I need to be disciplined. I'm curious. I'm interested. So I'm like, okay, I wanna learn. And some days it's basketball and some things it's about life or anything else. But every day I take a step forward, you know, and it can be on my best days maybe 10 hours and on my worst days it will be 10 minutes. But
yeah,
as long as I keep learning, I know I'm gonna succeed in whatever I want to do, you know? So
right.
it also builds confidence for yourself because it's self-respect and if you keep your promises to yourself, you'll feel good, you know? Like
Right.
all the doubts will leave your mind for sure.
Yeah. And the final two. This one is more of a statement, and you have to fill in the blank. And the statement
Hmm.
is if it wasn't for basketball, I wouldn't
Hmm.
have learned filling the blank about myself.
To be honest, basketball is teaching me everything about life. I think for me, I also always say like basketball is only the toolbox and to teach others, but also to learn about yourself. So it's hard to pick one specific thing that I learned from basketball. I think I wouldn't be who I was today without basketball, you know? So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I can't really pick one thing.
Yeah.
I would say pretty much everything
I love it.
comes through the game. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it will challenge you in every single thing. Definitely also if you're an entrepreneur in basketball, you will get all the life lessons you need will come straight at you, you know? So
Yeah. And the final one, coach, and please feel free to take your time on this. I'm even going to set the scene for you, coach. There's a young up and coming coach who's been following all 15 years of your journey, and he's a huge fan of yours. You know, he comes to every single clinic, webinar.
Hmm.
He knows all the plays you've trained, and he even implements what he's learned from you. And he's just found out that you have released a book. So at the end of his training session, he's heading to his nearest bookstore and he asks librarian, where can I get the latest book by Coach? And he said, if you go upstairs, you turn right, you go to the or you go to the best selling sports section, you can't miss it. So he's going up the stairs, he's super excited. He reaches for your book, Coach, and the question that I want to ask you is, what would the title of your autobiography be?
Mm. I would say the process,
Why do you mean that?
because I think it's never finished, like, and the process constantly changed, and there is no final destination, and that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Honestly, I must say, firstly, Coach Joerik, I really appreciate your time. Honestly, to the listeners who is tuned in on Spotify, on YouTube, we appreciate you as well. Don't worry, all the links to his socials will be in the link of this description. But once again, this is myself, Coach D. Thanking you for joining us for another episode of the Coach D podcast, and the man himself, Coach Joerik, signing out. Appreciate you, Coach.
Yeah, man, was an honor. Thank you for having me, and yeah, it was fun.